Hey, Cozy Gloves. Today we're going to be talking about structure. So before we get into structure, we have to understand what structure is. There are different levels of structure. It's like a fractal math. So if you look up the Mandelbrot sequence, that's a good example of fractal math. So basically, we can have a large structure. Let's say you have a map, you have a large map, and you can zoom in on part of that map, and that will reveal more details and more patterns. You can zoom in on more. You can go to a street, you can go to a house, you can go inside that house. So it's kind of like that. You can just keep zooming in forever and ever and ever. So the same thing is true of our structure. So some of you guys will jump the gun and go verse, chorus, hook, pre-chorus, outro, intro, all those sorts of terms. Some of you will be going A prime, B prime. Some of you will go antecedent, consequence. We'll be talking about cadences and phrases and all those types of things. That's a more theory approach to it. But they each describe a different level on our map. We're zooming in on different parts. So when we talk about structure, we have to clearly define which part of the structure we're talking about. So today we're going to be talking about the top level of the structure. This is where people will talk about A prime, B prime. I avoid terms like hook, chorus, because those terms are dependent upon a particular arrangement. So if you have like your hook, that is dependent on a melody being present, or it's dependent on a melody. So you have a melody going on right there, or you have a vocalist right there that will repeat their phrase or whatever. It's pretty much the melody. So it's dependent upon a melodic construct. And we know that there are four other elements besides the melody and theme in our song, and we can have that minimized. So I want to stay away from that, because that means that if we add a melody where there originally wasn't one, we're going to change our structure. And now things have got new names. They've changed what there are, because you might write out a beat and you might be there going, okay, this is my hook, this is my chorus, and this is like verse 1 or whatever. I just said hook and chorus right after each other. You get the idea. You come up with a structure. And then the songwriter, though, the rapper or whatever, writes out the rap, and they say, oh, no. I'm going to put I like this section more for the chorus. So I'm going to make that the chorus. And so we have this ambiguity now. So what we're going to use letters. And the way we're going to determine when a new section has arrived is according to our 5 major elements of the beat. So of any song, which are we talked about those in previous videos, melody, rhythm, that kind of stuff. So whenever a new principal thing takes our attention, we are going to give that a new letter. And this way we'll be able to observe our structure. So here there's actually no melody, but it's interesting because we have our drums come in, and so I gave it a new section, section A. I do still keep the construct of the intro. So I keep intro, and you might be going, what? You kept the intro? I kept the intro because everything's got to have an intro. Not everything has really an outro sometimes. Sometimes they get cut short. And then I use the term prime. And prime just means, we could also write A1, A2. Prime just means it's different than the first A. It's similar, the same idea, but it's now different. It's a different variation, but very similar to the original idea. So we call that A prime or A2. So this would be A1, and then we'd have A2 and things of that nature. I use prime because that's just the way I'm used to using it. A lot of people represent prime with like an apostrophe too. I didn't do that. I actually wrote the word out prime just to try and be a little more straightforward. But you'll see that as common notation. So we're going to be talking about this. This is really useful because now we can look at any song and translate the structure directly. And if a vocalist adds in a new part, that will change one of the 5 major elements, and therefore the letter will change if it has the same letter somewhere else and that remain the same. That's a little bit confusing, but let's go ahead and just look at this. So we're going to start at the beginning. Now, well, let's zoom out one more time. Well, we're going to have some sort of an intro. You're going to have some sort of you're going to start. Some people do skip the intro. Some people have sub-intro. So you have an intro to introduce your introduction and then move on. It's just basically, those are what I refer to as layered lead-ins. So you give an idea. So here I have an idea, and then I begin to layer it. And as I layer it, the structure changes. So you see the same beat is present here, or the same phrase. Here's the beat down here, but I add in this new part. And because this new part comes in, it has now shifted the hierarchy of our 5 elements. And so it becomes a new section. Easy peasy, right? So let's go ahead and play the first bit. So this is my intro. Your intro can layer in things. It can introduce sounds and establish a sound. It can introduce rhythm. you can have a huge thing happen at the beginning, like some sort of a crazy orchestral movement. And then typically it's a phrase that ends in something that wants to continue on, maybe a deceptive cadence or something. Maybe you tie it nicely with a bow as a first statement, like, hello, my name is composing gloves. And then that's it. Sentence complete. Some of you guys would go, hello, my name is, and there's your introduction. Like people are like, what's going to happen? And then instead you could go on some metaphysical rant about metaphysical rant. That's a thing. Anyways, you go on some like philosophical rant about what is a name and stuff. Like that was your point. You see, so we have different ways we can go. So I'm going to play for you this part and just show you an example of an intro. There are tons of different kinds. So like, here's what I chose to do on this particular beat. So you see, there's our intro, and we reach our phrase. There's a buzzing going on, and that's because the sample rate playback of one of these is messed up. And I don't know, I'd have to reload the project or something to fix it, I believe. So I'm sorry about that. See, it's taking forever to load this right here too. I don't know what the deal is with this. I don't do multiple instances of contact. This is a very old beat, but you get the idea. We have our intro. I've introduced the sounds, the rhythm, and I've given you a small snippet of what the background is going to be throughout the piece. The vibe, I've established a vibe. Those sorts of things are very well accomplished in the intro. So now I'm going to move into my first section, section A. And for section A, I said, okay, I've established my sound, and that's what I accomplished to do. So that's a structural movement. My next structural movement will be to establish my rhythm. What kind of rhythm do I want them to perceive? I've given them some rhythm here, but it's not the best indication of rhythm because it's a pulse. Unless I'm going to be pulsing, it'd be a great indication. But that was mostly a sound move as I was thinking about it. I wasn't thinking about it rhythmically. So I said for section A, for the next new section, I said let it be 2 bars long. So, or in this case, it's 8 bars. It looks like 2 bars from here because it's 2 patterns, but it's 8 bars. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And this is generally you are going to be working with even units when you make up structures. But basically, I'm like, okay, I'm going to move on to my next element. And I'm going to establish a rhythm. And so I throw in a drum loop. This wasn't loading before. These are also drums. These are those do 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 boom. Boom, boom. But you get the idea. Rhythm, very well established. It's the main focal point, so it gets a letter. It says, okay, this is our letter A. And we've now shifted to a rhythmic standpoint. Next, I'm going to bring in a little repeating phrase that at the beginning will act as a melody and slowly fade to the background just because it repeats. And this is going to be a B section because of this new melody. So I'll start at the middle of A, and then we're going to move into B. So see, this one I repeat twice. It's because I'm giving room. I'm either going to use this as just background music, or I could throw a vocalist on top or a rapper or whatever and have them go at it. They have a lot of room for creativity. So there's an absence of melodic content, which means my structure could change. But because of these elements I have here, it's very likely that whoever would write the lyrics to this would choose a similar structure as A, B, because I have this section here that doesn't have this in it. Maybe they'll use this as a lead in to introduce another idea or something. But you get the idea. We're laying it down. We've now shifted to another rhythmic idea, but it's mostly melodic in nature here in this particular case. So as we move forward, now if we were to compare this to conventional ideas about like the more general ones, not conventional, but the more general ones, such as chorus, hook, intro. Here we've got our intro, no surprise there. we've got a like a pre-verse type deal, and then this would be a verse, and over here would be the hook or the chorus. I chose to call it ABC because of reasons I already discussed. What if they decide, nah, I'm gonna be weird and put my chorus here and put my verse here because I want to be different and unique and stuff. So those terms I don't like because we'd be arguing over the definitions probably a little bit. And so I'm just going to move on to letters. So, oh, you're going to put C here and B there and stuff. And there we go. So we go through. I repeat this twice for reasons I already discussed. It's not like completely finished. As a beat, it's pretty much there. But for as far as the structure is concerned. So let's move on to C. So I said, okay, I've got this. Now I need to introduce a new element. I want my chorus to be different. I want my C section. So for my C section, I'm going to bring in the element that's going to be a compelling element. And this is a judgment move. So I want my compelling element to be the element that gets stuck in your head. It's going to be something that you can hum, of that nature. Some people, they won't have a chorus ever in their track. They'll instead use tools because they're being avant-garde. They're trying to write music that expresses something different than the rigid structure of verse, chorus, verse. They want to be different. But anyways, here is what I did. So you see there's a clear shift right there. So I keep it rhythmic. I have my beat going, but because this has come in, this is now taken over. And so it gets a new letter and I change it again over here. I add in this sort of bass string line. So that becomes section D. Once you have 4 sections that have clearly defined things, you have to ask yourself, how did you get to these sections? So in this case, I used layering. So I introduced something. I made my ideas in a way that repeat well. And so I introduce them, I layer them in, and then I introduce ideas that don't repeat so well over a long period. Like this can fade to the background. This takes up so much of the spectrum from my sound choices that this would not be a good thing to fade to the background necessarily. And so I change it up over here in pattern 17. This means that, so that the point is, these are better structure for background and rhythmic elements. We're creating a backing track, basically the rhythm section. And then these are going to be the things that sort of dance on top and become more interesting because these things lose their interest over time, but they're satisfying to have in the back to fill up the track. And we see how now things interact with these new elements. So I'm using a layering approach. That's how I got to this particular structure, A, B, C, D. So I don't really have, I don't have 4 ideas. And so when you're, because people are going to tell you, and I'm going to tell you, when you're working and writing music, how long your music gets is often determined by the number of ideas you have and how you can develop them. These over here, I would not classify as ideas. I would maybe as one whole idea because of this element right here. But the ideas are this guy and this guy, or girl, I guess. And I'm not sure how you would determine that. So we have 2 ideas. We don't have 4 because of the method I used. Some of you may be doing melodic construction, and in typical structure music theory analysis, you will have 4 ideas because they'll be based completely on notes. Here we can have elements of rhythm in a very, like we can have the drums. And so this is why also in orchestral music, it can be sometimes a little weird to try and define the structure all the time because it just ebbs and flows so much because we have the interaction of these major pieces going on. So, okay, so we have our 2 ideas, and then I introduced them. Now, they're cool and all, but I need a breakdown. So I return to the intro. And this is where, if I had a vocalist, they would do something interesting. This is for freedom. Some of more intense genres, this might be only 1 bar long. It could even be 1 beat long. A drum fill of some kind. This isn't always as long as this. So if I extended this out, this would be more similar to a bridge. Actually, this is kind of bridge length because it is 8 bars. So it looks like 8 bars. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yeah. So it's 8 bars. So this could be taken as a bridge of some kind. Typically in a bridge, you deviate quite dramatically from what's over here. Some people call it a breakdown. These are why I called it the development here. So, and the reason I named it development was because if I had a vocalist, this is where they would do something and develop themselves in some way. This is what makes these ideas more meaningful. So we introduce our ideas here, and then in our development, we will take it and we will change it up, do something, and turn it into something new. We've developed our idea. And then we are going to return to previous ideas. Except for this time, I varied up a little bit, and you see we have prime now. So you see B prime, C prime. This means that I want to return to the idea of B, so this idea over here, but I want to add something, make it a little bit different. I combine it a little bit with the idea of A, because we have this piano low note 2, and if we look over here, we have piano low note over here. So I changed it up a little bit, very similar to A. It's also right here. So I'm bleeding this idea into this idea, and this idea is borrowed from the intro. And then in C, I introduced it again, but I have another new element. I actually have some strings come in right there. So let me real quick just show you what I mean. So I'm going to play it for you. I picked this song because it's very straightforward structurally. So here we go. So you get the idea. So we've moved from our ideas, we've developed them. Here, this isn't truly a development, so I should get rid of that word. But if I had a vocalist again, that's where I would expect the development to go. So it would be wiser to maybe come up with a letter. Maybe I'd call this E, and this would be like E prime. Just like that. Like, boom. See, now all the constructs that I've been like debating with myself about would disappear. Also, that clicking, that's not supposed to be there. So if you're wondering like, what the heck's up with that clicking? And these drums for some reason are like really quiet right here, and they play correctly sometimes, but not all the time. So I don't know what the deal is with the playback. But okay, so we've developed it. We've got our structure, and I go straight back to D. It's okay to repeat yourself. It's not a terrible idea. I thought D was compelling, and so I said, okay, I'm going to put D right here. And that's like why choruses are choruses. They're compelling enough to be repeated. And then I have A prime. And so I go back to A, but it's a little bit different because I add in the low note 2, and I have a little outro. This is technically my outro too, but I call it A prime here. I can name it outro, maybe put it in parentheses, and out we go. Yeah, that buzzing is ruining the ending. So you get the idea now. So what we have here, so as a recap, our structure is determined. We use letters to avoid the ambiguity of phrases like verse and chorus. You'll hear me say it though. Everyone uses these things because they fit typical definitions we would use with those. But I prefer letters for reasons explained. Our ideas are not determined necessarily by the letters. Our ideas are determined by the qualities they assume. So ideas are typically melodic and theme ideas, and those are the things that generally allow you to extend a structure. We can have an intro or development in which we use to give variations on our ideas and sort of do just some crazy stuff. Sometimes it's called the breakdown, but it's another section. And that's pretty much that. So what I want you to do, my challenge is sit down and write out your plan. So you see, this is like A, B, C, D, and then we have intro, A, B, C, D, variation on intro, B prime, C prime. So I'm going to go back to B, and then I'm going to go to C and do things with that. Then D. So B, C, D. I just skip A. And then A prime. So I move A to the ending of this one. That's my outro. So I want you to sit down, write out a structure, come up with a structure. And then in each structure, I want you to write parentheses what element is going to be, of the 5 major elements, is going to be present here. Is it going to be the sounds? Is it going to be the rhythm? Is it going to be a combo of the two? Write down how you're going to establish it. And then do that for the whole song, and then sit down and make a beat according to the plan you've written down. So this is a general structure plan. We're going to talk about making plans in more detail. A quick note on internal structure. We could get in here and begin to identify like, oh, look, this looks like a phrase. These notes here together from 1 to 4 is one phrase, and here we have another phrase. In music theory, we talk about cadences and additional things that can happen in music where notes are more prominent and take a bigger role. But I leave that out. I'll encourage you to go to MIDI Music Theory for that. So that's my challenge. If you have any questions, let me know. Drop a video or a description or a blog link or something to your experience so that we can see how you did it. It's encouraging to others. I have a whole separate YouTube channel just as an archival thing to remind me of where I was and how much better I am now. I think it's very useful to see the growth. If you have any questions, again, let me know. Subscribe, support me on Patreon, and have a blessed day.